They are stripping the liberties that we are guaranteed in this country. And it really is amazing to me, because if Osama bin Laden was indeed behind the 9/11 attacks, and there's still been no real proof that he is, but if he was, and if his goal was to destroy a democracy and to end our freedoms, he succeeded, hadn't he? But we know that some bearded guy over in a cave somewhere is not responsible for everything that's going on in the world today. Who's responsible are these people. Who's responsible are these people who have been working at this for hundreds of years. What's interesting is, notice, oops, they just cut the graphic. Can we put the graphic back up real quick? If you'll notice, over here is the CFR logo with the rider on the horse and the Roman, Latin inscription. And over here is a medallion of the ancient Knights Templars. Looks pretty close, doesn't it? Same deal. And the same objectives are going along. They consolidated all of this a long time ago with the formation of the CIA and with the National Security Act of 1947. The National Security Act of 1947 is really what began to sound the death knell for freedom and democracy in this country. It was signed on September the 27th, I believe, of 1947, and it's really interesting to see what happened there. Now, most of the things with the National Security Act of 1947 we're all kind of familiar with. We know it separated the Air Force from the Army as a separate branch of service. We know it created the CIA. We know that it changed the words, the title of the old War Department to the Defense Department, which is a pretty slick public relations move, because if you go back and look at that old War Department, oh, who wants a War Department? But under the old War Department, we only fought 3 wars. Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II. Under the Defense Department, where we're only going to defend ourselves, yeah, we got Korea, Vietnam, Kosovo, you know, Panama, you know, Grenada, Laos, Cambodia, you know, Colombia, you name it. I think we need to go back to the War Department. We didn't have near as many wars. But within these secret societies now, and everybody that's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, or everybody that's a member of the Trilateral Commission, they are not all sinister conspirators who are trying to take over the world, okay? A lot of them are just wannabes, you know. They want to be there. They want to be taking over the world. Or actually, I would describe it this way. Remember when you were in grade school? And the thing you really wanted most out of life was to be able to sit at the table with the cool kids in the lunchroom. Boy, if I could just be with those cool kids, maybe I could get a date for Friday night, you know? That's what you really wanted. Well, these are the people who are globbed onto these secret societies. Most of them are not on the inner core elite. They are just wannabes, and they like to be next to the wealth and the power, okay? But within each of these societies, there is a handful of people that, like, and one is David Rockefeller. He's in all of them, okay? Henry Kissinger, you know. There's certain ones who are at the inner core of all of these societies. They meet once a year in a group known as the Bilderbergers. The Bilderbergers are so secretive that they don't even really have a name. They're called the Bilderbergers because they were first discovered by the public meeting in Holland back in 1954. And they were founded by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who had previously been a Nazi SS officer. And by the way, any of you all have Texaco gas cards? You do realize that Texaco is now bought by Shell. And Shell is that's the royal family of Holland, the founders of the Bilderbergers. So the New World Order marches on. And of course, then we've got Skull and Bones. I think we all know that Prescott Bush, the patriarch of the Bush family, and that George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush are all members of the Skull and Bones. Now, there are some who argue that the Skull and Bones is the secret society behind the secret societies and that they run everything. I'm not convinced of that. There are plenty of people who have been inducted into the Skull and Bones and who have elected not to follow through on all their contacts and have gone on to live very respectable and good lives, okay? The Skull and Bones, however, is a springboard. That's where they take young men, they find the ones that with ability, and more importantly, those that are compliant, and they groom them to become world leaders. And all you have to do is just go study about the Skull and Bones, and you'll find that there is an inordinate number of people who go on to take top government positions. Again, if this was really a free country, you'd think that we'd have some people from, you know, Southern Cal, University of Texas, Oklahoma, somebody. You know, there's got to be some smart people around somewhere. But these folks are always the ones that end up in power. Also, it has been established that the Skull and Bones is actually the Order 322. It is the 322nd chapter of the Illuminati. This was published in the New York Times. Now we get to the question of how come you don't know all this, and that gets back to the control over the media. First, you have to understand the media cannot control these people, these secret societies cannot control all the editors and all the reporters across the country. No, they control the media through the distribution of the information. Just in the past several months, there have been some massive anti-war demonstrations taking place in California, in Denver, in Washington. And most of you have heard little or nothing about them. And when you did hear about them, 30,000 people gathering. Try 500,000. There have been massive demonstrations in England and in Germany, and you very rarely hear about that. This is because they control not the editors and publishers, but the distribution of the information. And how do they do that? I've listed two here, Time Warner and Disney. There's another couple that I could mention. Viacom is another one. Viventi is another one. Clear Channel is now buying up all of the radio stations in this country. Clear Channel bought up Premier Radio not long back, and now two of its leading voices, Whitley Strieber and Art Bell, are no longer with us. Okay? And who owns Clear Channel? Well, it's connected to the Carlyle Group. That's Henry Kissinger and the Bush family. Okay? So they are clamping down on the access to information. And never lose sight of the fact is, I don't care how brilliant you are, if you make decisions based on faulty, erroneous, or incomplete information, you're not going to be making the right decision. At the top is a note that was written to James Tucker, who used to write for the old Spotlight, now writes for the American Free Press, and he has tracked the Bilderbergers for years. And this lady that was an ombudsman with the Washington Post sends him a note and says, well, if observations of the Bilderberg, the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Aspen Institute, etc. hold true, there's much that is ponderous, but little that is newsworthy.